Welcome, Cosmerenos, to the CosmereCon 2024. Today we are here with the 17 Chart team. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm going to introduce them one by one. Some of you may know the names, maybe you don't, but I'm pretty sure that if you read the book, it may ring a bell. So, hello, Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric. I am one of the co-founders of the 17 Shard. I have been a beta reader for a very long time and been in the fandom for a very long time. I basically run the show Shardcast that you may have seen, where we talk way too much about very in-depth
About way
things.
too much.
Yeah, they're very long. But if you've seen that, then that's what we do here. I also am one of the Arcanists, which helps with magic continuity with Brandon's team. And you know that's stressful sometimes too. But you know, glad to be here. Glad to be a useful nerd. How about that? And I do also. My fingers are in all of the 17 Shard related things that you could possibly think of, basically.
That's so cool, but I'm disappointed, Eric, because I expected you to say, like, welcome to the...
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, welcome to Shardcast. Yeah. It took a lot of effort to not, after you did the countdown, for me to not just do that and interrupt your intro. Like, I
truly had a moment of, this is not right.
Feel free to say
a lot of restraint here. We've got to be professional here, all right?
Oh, thank you. Well, and super thank you to be here with us, Evgeny, as well.
No, I am absolutely delighted. Hi, my name is Evgeny. I go by Argent in a lot of places online and sometimes offline, which is a little weird. I do a lot of the same things that Eric does. Not a co-founding member of the 17 Shard, although I was there early on.
It's true.
But I am and have been a beta and a gamma reader for Brandon for several years now, since a little before Rhythm of War, I want to say, since Legion. Something like that.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I also do magic continuity things. Eric skipped on something, but we both do Coppermind things.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Which often doesn't feel like the biggest deal to us, but I think the Coppermind is like the best thing that we have created as a fandom in terms of like fandom creations.
It's definitely the one that gets the most hits on the internet, for sure.
Oh, and Shardcast things is also something that I do. So come if you are interested, come hop in the 17 Shard online communities, and you can say hi to us. And you can tell us either how great we are or how much we suck. There are nothing in between. You cannot go, you guys are kind of okay.
No nuance here. None is allowed.
Perfect. Well, and thank you, Veronica, also for being here with us today. And I think that also you have a surprise, because I think you are bilingual.
Bueno, hola, yo soy Verónica. Me conocen como Cheyenne Sedai, pues en el Discord, los foros, pues, etcétera. Yo soy de Colombia, entonces pues también hablo español, pero la verdad la mayoría del tiempo estoy como en la comunidad, pues que habla en inglés, solo es como a donde llegué. La verdad no he estado mucho por la comunidad hispanohablante del Cosmere, pero se me hace increíble que haya una comunidad tan grande donde haya tantos artistas y tantas personas haciendo cosas muy chéveres. Yo soy mucho más nueva al Cosmere que Eric y Evgeny. Sé parte del staff del 17 Shard pues hace 2 años, más o menos, que pues no es tanto. Pero pues Shardcast y pues muchas de las otras cosas que hacemos también, pero no soy beta ni Arcanist ni ninguna de esas cosas. Estoy acá un poco pues por esa conexión bilingüe y por una perspectiva de alguien un poco más nuevo a la comunidad.
Bueno, puedes venir a unirte con nosotros cuando quieras, ¿eh? O sea, no te preocupes. Everything's fine. So, another thing that I'm not sure if you mentioned, but also it's super cool, the role-playing games that you are organizing as well.
Oh, Diceborn? Oh, yes.
Oh, the RPG campaigns.
Yes. Veronica and I were both on a Diceborn miniseries with a brutal GM who's a giant jerk, but is a really good show. But it is very nerdy, but it is actually really good. And Evgeny can attest to this, actually.
I don't
to watch it.
Yeah, I don't like. Look, it is difficult for me to sit down and watch like the best Let's Plays and live plays in the world, like Critical Role. I did watch these nerds roll dice and use elementic powers and also set a university on fire. So
that's true. Veronica and I weren't there for that one, but
that's true.
But, yeah, we have two.
There's an Era 2 one.
That's like Era 2.
Yeah.
And then Secrets in Stained Glass. That is a mini-series set in Era 1, which is the one Eric and I were both in.
With lots of nobles, and they're all great people.
Yeah. So how old is 17 Shire? Is it like 11, 12 years old already?
No, this June it will be 14 years. So,
2011, right?
No, it's 2010.
Why don't you take us back and explain to us how 17 Shire was born and the old times when Brandon was like not that really well known, but you get to know him and you started with the whole community.
Sure. So we'll go back eons ago to the late 2000s, and where I joined the Time Wasters Guide forums.
I was shorter in 2010.
Got that growth spurt in 2010, 2011, you know?
Which for me is not much, by the way, but...
Yeah. So, Brandon had his own forums, and basically that website was where Brandon and his other friends, who all ran... Oh, the Leading Edge. Oh man, this is deep fandom lore that I haven't thought of for a while. They
I think we can skip. Well, no, we can't skip Leading Edge. Leading Edge is important.
Yeah. So the Leading Edge was BYU's sci-fi fantasy magazine, and so Brandon met a lot of his friends and writers there, like Dan. He met there, for example, Dan Wells. And so Time Wasters was forums where they hung out, and Brandon was the one who definitely got the most rabid of the fan base eventually. And so me and Michelle, she was also there in the olden days. We're like, we should make like a Brandon specific fan site. And so that's where we had the idea of making 17 Shard, and Mish actually got the name 17 Shard from Brandon, because we were originally going to name the site Hoyd's Compendium, which would not be a good name. And so Mish asked Brandon what we should call ourselves. And this was before Way of Kings came out. And Brandon's like, oh yeah, there's this group called the 17 Shard. They're like trying to figure stuff out. So you could call yourself that. And so that's what we called ourselves, and we've seen them once canonically in the books, so thanks for that, Brandon. But so we started in June 2010, made the Coppermind after. Eventually, I think Time Wasters Guide got hacked, and so those forums shut down, and we held an archive of them. Because really, it mostly just turned out to be Brandon fans, especially in like 2010, 2011. Because the Brandon's friends, they didn't really have time to be there, and Brandon definitely didn't have time to be there after like he barely even posted Well of Ascension time in 2007. So yeah, so that's that, and we've been, you know, doing lots of nerdy stuff for a while. We made our Discord in 2017, and that I think's kind of been the center of the of at least our community. The forums are definitely less popular these days for book discussion, but Discord's pretty great, and we have a very big Discord now of 17,000 people. So, you know, it's destiny.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So
impressive.
yes.
And the other thing that you mentioned before, and I think it's super important, is like the work you did with creating the Coppermind.
Yes.
I started to talk with you. One of the things that we talked with you on the very beginning when we were born was like we wanted to do like the Spanish version, like the translation of the Coppermind.
Right.
It took like maybe 5 or 6 years. Or well, we can try to do that. Well, maybe. And at some point, it was like, okay, but the amount of information that it's there. I mean, it's impressive, and also it's super important now, especially now because, like, I don't know. It's going to be like almost 20 years since, I mean, still we have some time from Atlantis, but I mean, it's going to be next year. So please, Brandon, don't make a 20th anniversary edition because we need to move to another home.
No, that's White Sand. White Sand's next year. So that's the reason. Sorry. We didn't need to get into that.
The definitive ultra premium deluxe authors approved edition.
Now, for example, there are so many like terminology and places and everything, and we for sure would be lost if we didn't have the Coppermind. So thank you for starting that. How did you start with the Coppermind? What when you started? What books have you read? What were you reading, or how did you discover Brandon, the three of you? Because I guess that
sure,
you will have different stories.
I guess I'll start. I randomly found Elantris in the Seattle airport as I was doing a flight, and I thought the cover was cool. Did not know who Orson Scott Card was, but I knew that was a name that I recognized, and so I'm like, that seems... So I picked up the book, read the back. I love competing viewpoint books, so honestly, I was pretty sold. Read that, thought it was great.
Was it Brandalized?
No, it wasn't. But I remember getting to the end. This is the funny part. And then there was a preview for Mistborn, because this is the paperback of Elantris. And I was like, that's not an Elantris sequel. I'm not interested. And so I did not buy Mistborn for like a year. And then I guess I was back at a bookstore at some point, and I was like, that Brandon Sanderson guy, he's pretty cool. And by this time, the Well of Ascension hardcover came out, and so I bought both Mistborn and Well of Ascension. Once I actually read Mistborn and got to the end of that, I'm like, okay, I'm super in. And so cruised through Well of Ascension, and I was on Time Waster's Guide then, and that summer.
My story starts a little bit later than that and a little bit more differently. I came to Brandon from the Wheel of Time. I was in a period in my life where ever since reading The Lord of the Rings back when I was in like 4th or 5th grade or something like that, I had been jumping from one big epic fantasy saga into another. So Lord of the Rings, Song of Ice and Fire, Rift War, The Wheel of Time eventually. And obviously those of us who know anything about The Wheel of Time know that the author, Robert Jordan, passed away sometime in the mid-2000s, I want to say. And a little later, there was an announcement that author Brandon Sanderson would be finishing his series. And I was upset. I was very upset about that. Because I, in my 15-year-old or whatever wisdom, fancied myself an expert in epic fantasy. I knew everything there was to know about epic fantasy, and I did not know of a Brandon Sanderson. Who was this guy who was going to be finishing the great Robert Jordan's great Wheel of Time? And so I was upset, and I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to read this guy. And then the first Brandon-written Wheel of Time book, The Gathering Storm, was scheduled to come out in, I think, early 2009, I want to say, or maybe 2000. And the previous year, call it the previous summer, I decided that, okay, I didn't want to read the Brandon guy, but I do want to finish the Wheel of Time. So let me go see what this guy's all about. And so I picked up Elantris, and then I picked up Warbreaker, and then I picked up Mistborn. And I finished all of them in a few weeks and hopped on the Time Wasters Guide and just jumped immediately into talking about shards and connected universes and Hoyd and
here you
and
are.
it is now 2024.
The rest is history.
Yep.
And the rest is history. Yeah.
16 years later.
Yeah, so it was 2019, like early 2020 maybe. And I'd heard of Brandon through Daniel Green, but I mean, it's hard to find like books in English here. It's always like the Song of Ice and Fires, the Harry Potters of the world. So I have a lot of things on my TBR that just sit there for a long time until I can find a copy or like eventually get a like ebook of. But I found out that Warbreaker was just available on Brandon's website for free online, and so I read that, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, this had to be like 2019. I mean, I was reading like little bits of like the Wheel of Time. Turns out my mom's cousin had like most of the books, and so she lent them to me. And then I found a copy of Hero of Ages, I think it was, in a bookstore, and I bought that. And I was like, you know what? I'll get the ebooks for Mistborn so that I can get to Hero of Ages. My uncle came, and my uncle, like for Christmas, and he was like, what books do you want? Way of Kings, Stormlight, and he surprised me with all 3 books that were out at the time. I mean, the rest is history. Eventually, I started.
Good job, Veronica Zunko. Thumbs up.
I mean, half of my English books, at least like when I was younger, like came from him. Really helped me grow my collection. And then I started getting into the community with like a couple of podcasts. I listened to the Sandersonian Institute at the beginning, and I tried to listen to Shardcast. But here's the thing, I picked the worst episode to start on.
What did you pick?
I picked the Dodge episode.
Which one?
I was like, no, wait, this is way too much.
No,
Starting
John
on the
Shard.
Don Shard episode was the worst idea I ever had.
Oh, yes.
John Shard was prime unhinged
It
podcast.
was
So
so
unhinged,
unhinged,
like-
but terrible if you have no idea what's going on.
Because like I knew generalities. I could talk about the Cosmere, but Don Shard was just another level of unhinged.
We were very excited, okay?
We were very excited. And also after hour 6.
No, it was 7. It was 7 hours of recording. That
Oh yeah, so I'm saying after hour 6, then it gets real.
Oh yeah, I think we actually were getting annoyed with each other. It's just like, okay, we gotta go.
So like I let Shardcast sit for a while. And I think I came back to it when you did the episode with Daniel Green.
Oh, nice.
And the Brandon interview, and I was like, okay, now I'm gonna go back from the very beginning, listen to everything, and I did. And I caught
So
up.
these guys are not idiots all of the time. I just got the most idiot episode.
Well, it's not that we were idiots; it's that we didn't explain what we were talking about.
Oh yeah, yes. We were look, John Shard was a big deal. We were really excited, and we wanted to talk about the depths
implications
of the Cosmere.
Yes.
Intent and
It wasn't a
command.
good episode to start.
just
I was
2
like,
hours
why?
of intent and command. Yes.
Yeah.
It was though.
So we are kind of like 3 generations of the 17th century here. So like the founder, and then Evgeny, and then Veronica. So over time, how do you feel the community has been changing, or when did you start to notice like oh my god, this is huge?
I would say every Stormlight book has really changed the composition of the fandom. Because like that post Hero of Ages time, there were like I could know most everyone who was on the forums and stuff. And then that early 17th Shard time. Then there was Way of Kings. Words of Radiance was, I think, still the month that we have the most posts on 17 Shard. Like, Words of Radiance release was super hype.
Well,
And like Oathbringer, then we had the Discord and the forums, and really just like the set of people who are around has really changed over the years. So like the same, like you won't necessarily see the same people all the time. But, you know, people come back. People come back when there's new books. Sometimes there's 4 new books, and then people are like, oh, yeah, I'll get back into that.
And then there's a 5th one.
And then there's a 5th one. I would say, yeah, like, Oathbringer time was huge. Rhythm of War was also huge. That was huge for our YouTube channel. Rhythm of War was really big for that one. Lost Metal didn't really change very much. I think there's a lot less hype for Mistborn books than Stormlight books. But so it'll
change with Era 3, but who knows?
Might change with Era 3 for sure. But it'll be very interesting to see the chaos that ensues for Stormlight 5, because it's always crazy.
Yeah, I think marking the timeline by the releases of Stormlight books is very accurate. It certainly feels that pre-Way of Kings, or like around Way of Kings times, it was a normal fandom that you might encounter. And by the time Words of Radiance came out, it started feeling like, oh, and for those of you who have read Words of Radiance and know how the ending of it connects to another book in the Cosmere, that felt like such a big moment for the Cosmere in general, that I think that like and also Words of Radiance is a fantastic book. I think to this day it is Brandon's highest well, not only that, but highest rated book on Goodreads. And for a while it was the highest rated fantasy book.
And you know what? That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
So that combination, not only was it big for the Cosmere, but also it was really good on its own, led to an explosion, and every book after that has been another explosion.
And I think one other big fandom change is we first tried to do a podcast in 2012. It did not go well. Please don't listen to those episodes, but you can if you want, I guess. The audio quality's bad.
I did. They were so different. Oh my god.
yeah. Don't. Yeah. But
just start at Oathbringer times.
Yeah. So we remade the show Oathbringer times. So Oathbringer is like a big deal with our Oathbringer Part 2 epigraphs episode. That was the relaunch. And like we get people all the time who join the Discord and the forums because of the content we make, which was what I always anticipated. Like, dedicated communities have been dying for a long time on the internet. Like Facebook, Reddit, things like that have really supplanted a lot of that. So the fact that we are 2 successful actual websites, right, with Cosmere ES and 17 Shard and dedicated communities, is pretty special in the 2020s, you know?
It really helps to have content that, like, personal, if just creating a space where people come in and talk to, okay, why wouldn't I go to Reddit? Where, like, because there is a cost to be paid for, like, registering an account in a brand new website and, like, committing your time to that. Might as well go to Facebook, might as well go to Reddit, whatever. But creating a space where people can talk about Brandon in this case, while also providing them with content, with videos, with CosmereCon, with Shardcast, with whatever you want. That, I think, is a good combination that has been successful for all of us here.
We're over 220 episodes of Shardcast. For about a year, I did weekly episodes. But, you know, they weren't 2-hour episodes. Now they're like, they're always 2 to 3 hours. So we don't do them every week, but we've had regular episodes for a very long time, and we're blessed with over 20,000 subscribers. So
Yeah, and I think that also innovating in terms of the things that we do. I mean, Span Reads was a thing. Diceborn, like Diceborn has its small dedicated community. It isn't nearly as big among like most people.
They're very
but
dedicated.
It is also
very dedicated.
They are very, very dedicated, and like pushing us to do different things, and like keep growing and innovating, which I think is good.
Yeah, maybe we'll have time to make more things, but sometime for sure.
What I feel is that, well, of course, the community in English is like huge. I think we started like later. I was thinking we also like launched our Discord server around 2017 as well, I would say. By the time more or less that the website was actually published. And I remember that the first thing we wanted to do, and we wanted to try, because I came from having very good friends I met, there was this place called Asahi.com, which was the George R. R. Martin Spanish forum. And then I had good friends there, and we always wanted to create a forum, but then we realized it was the time of Discord, so no one wanted to no one had the patience to go to a forum and then type something, and then so there was like this need of like fast-paced communication, but it was like so chaotic that I couldn't even like follow some of the conversations. And now actually in Discord we made a revamp. We have a new admin who is Ruer, and then he created like the community with the forums, and now we have Discords with channels plus forums, which is easier to follow, and I'm so happy. But I hope that this is going to help also the community. But we tried like to launch something like the Sharkcast, and to try to see if there was, I mean, like a lot of people interested in that. And also, for example, I think that things like crowdfunding in the US works better than in Spanish, in the Spanish community. Because I don't really know why. I'm not sure if it's cultural, but for example, it's going to be like really complicated to ever fund something like what you do. So I'm super happy that at least you can create all the content, because for the ones of you that don't know, the 17 Shark also has like a Patreon, and with the amount of funding that they get, they can improve the Sharkcast and everything, but also they give a lot back to the community, especially with the fan art. I love the monthly or whenever the fan art that you create. So they have this poll, they send the poll and they ask, what is the picture, the illustration that you would like to see? Like, which is the scene that we should be creating for this same month? And that's a lovely idea.
This is all Argent's idea, and he is the guy who does all of that and coordinates with all the artists. So that's another thing you do, and that's actually quite a lot of your effort, because you do that every month, and that was one of your main goals, is you wanted to do that with the Patreon. So
to give you a little bit of background, for a long time we were entirely self-funded.
Yeah, I paid
so
for it.
all of our when I say self-funded, I mean Eric funded.
I did.
We mean
Forum costs, SoundCloud, servers, you name it. I don't remember when we launched the Patreon, but we did. And it was slow going, right? But eventually we got to a point where the Patreon is able to fund our like server costs and hosting costs and all of these things. And we had some money left over. And we're like, okay, well, we have everything that we need. What do we do with the extra money? And I think it would have been okay for us to just go, well, let's just pay ourselves a little bit. Let's just buy ourselves nicer microphones, nicer cameras, things like that. But one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to give back to the community in some way. And there were a number of ways we could have done that. Like we could have done like contests and gift cards and things like that. But that's messy from a legal standpoint. And it's also not exciting, really. And so what we decided on, and I don't think it was much of a conversation or much of a discussion, was, well, we like art, and we like the Coppermind, and the people like the Coppermind. So the original idea was, hey, let's just commission things for the Coppermind for like pages that don't have a lot of art or good art. So for example, at the time, I think our very first commission was, what is the spoiler policy for this call?
We will just say spoiler alert, yeah, and that's it.
Okay, so well, I'll dance around the issue mostly, but our first commission was lasting integrity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yes, with Connor. Yeah.
Yes. So we had, obviously, we had lasting integrity on the cover of Rhythm of War, but that was like a distance shot that, artistically, it was gorgeous because Michael Welland is an extremely talented artist, but it doesn't convey the kind of interesting things of lasting integrity, which is the interior. And so, and no one had done a piece on the interior when we were doing this kind of decision to do fan art. And so we're like, okay, well, let's commission a piece. And we did. And that was our first one. You can go find it. All of the art, all the fan art we commission is on the Patreon publicly. You don't need to subscribe. You can just browse it there. And
on our Instagram, I think. I don't know.
But
backlog, but a lot of it is there.
Yes, and also on Twitter and stuff. But anyway, so that was the idea. The idea was, hey, let's make the Coppermind better because people like the Coppermind. And in recent times, that has changed a little bit into, let's just commission cool art. And we still present our patrons with a poll that says, here are 5 things that we are thinking about doing. Pick 1 or pick 2, and then we go and do that every month. And it is work. I'm not gonna lie about that. Being an art director is a job. Obviously, I'm not doing anywhere near as much as someone like Isaac might do, but it is very, very, very rewarding. I am extremely happy that we can kind of reward fan artists for their time, really. And we get something out of it, which is pretty art, which I love.
And we got some great stuff. Like that first art piece with Connor. Connor had done some thumbnails for our Rhythm of War stuff, so it was a very natural choice. Which maybe we need to use some Patreon money for prepping some thumbnails for the next book and stuff. But yeah.
We are really happy, and I don't know, I was like super happy when I saw in the Diceborn, she's an artist, and she's also from the Spanish community.
Yes.
And there is this guy also.
Yes.
Ellie is fantastic. Oh my god, she like read our minds.
Since that show has come out, I've spent my own money to commission more stuff of my character, and she nails it every time. She has the soul of those characters, and just no comments, no notes, 10 out of 10 every time.
I don't remember where or when exactly I found Ellie. I think it was during I think she was doing a Cosmere Inktober.
Probably.
She did the Vindication one for us.
She did do Vindication, yes, but I knew...
I think that was the first time I saw
her.
Her.
The reason I reached out to her for Vindication is because she was already on my radar as, this is someone who does good work. I want to work with her. But yeah, so she and a lot of our artists appear on my radar because they already have either a lot of art or good art or stuff that I love, and I'm like, this person is doing something really interesting. They are clearly passionate about the Cosmere, about Brandon's works, about the fandom, all of these things. I would like to work with them, and Ellie was one of those.
And then sometimes there's people like Katie Payne who we could not pay her actual amount. And then she's just like, yeah, sorry it took a while, but like, no complaints. That art piece of the 9 was so incredible that I think it's going in the Rhythm of War leatherbound probably eventually.
I would be surprised if it doesn't.
It better.
Now that we talk also about books, how did you become beta readers, and what does it mean to be a beta reader? Because everybody, when you talk about beta reading, Brandon, everybody's super excited. They think, oh my god, I'm going to read this first, and it's like that. What they don't realize is that it's more like a job than actually enjoying the read.
I guess Veronica had some internet difficulties. I'm sure she'll be back in a second. But with beta reading, the thing you need to understand is that the final book you get is much better than the earlier drafts. And this was really useful to see for anyone who backed The Way of Kings leatherbound, because you could see Brandon's drafting process. He posted every draft of that book. And there's a lot of things where the earlier drafts are like really like sketches of the final thing. And Brandon's just like, okay, that's that draft. And he knows he's going to iterate on it. He definitely is not a perfectionist with any draft. Absolutely not. He's going to say, okay, I have a few things to do here. I will fix it later. And there's a lot of that. And so when you're a beta reader, you're reading a worse version of the book. And honestly, you only get your first impression of the books once. And so we're getting the worst first impression. And so, like, for me, a lot of the time, I'm like, wow, that was really, really great. Like, I have some issues generally, but, you know, you never get to look at it fresh again. And you're always looking at it from a more analytical perspective, like what's working, why isn't it working for me, why don't I like a thing, or what do I dislike about this thing, and you're trying to figure that out. And so it's less fun reading than you might expect, because it is legitimately work, and yeah, Brandon's a very good reviser, is what I'll say. Oh, and one other beta thing. Brandon writes the book he wants to write. I think that this is extremely important. Betas don't make him do anything. Brandon just gets feedback from a wide variety of people, and then Brandon sometimes totally ignores it, but is like, great, cool, I'm glad. I know that is people's reaction to this, but this is the story I want to write. And so that is a thing that happens all the time.
And Veronica's back. Great.
Hey!
I don't think there's much that I can add to that. Maybe a couple of like small tangential things. Anyone who's curious about the beta reading process, one, you can go look at Dawn Shard, see how that plays out. Two, what you can do is the next time Brandon publishes a book, don't read that book straight through. Okay? Here's what you're gonna do.
That's right.
Here's what you're gonna do. You will, before starting the book, you will create a Google spreadsheet with individual tabs for all of the chapters in this book.
Yes.
And then what I want you to do is, as you read the book, read slowly and consider all of the time as you were reading, does this make sense? Is this consistent? What do I think about the character's motivation here? How does this paragraph, how does this scene or beat make me feel? What do I think about the culture of the characters presented on the page? And write a comment in that spreadsheet. And then when you are done with the chapter, take a break and again go, okay, what do I have to say about this chapter in particular?
Yeah.
The entire chapter. And then do that for all of the 100 and however many chapters there are in a Stormlight book.
Well, and after each part of a Stormlight book, wait a month or 2 months after that, and then grab the next part of the book, and then that's the beta reader experience where you have to pause after every single chapter to write your thoughts.
If you want the true, authentic Wind and Truth experience, so for bonus points, what you're gonna do is you're gonna pick 2 random characters from the book. Your choice. They're characters that must have POVs.
Yeah.
So no picking like
old chaps.
Maps from old chaps from Warbreaker. Yeah. No, they have to be characters with POVs. So pick 2 random characters and take half of their chapters and leave them aside. You don't read those chapters. And then, once you were halfway done with the book, then you go back and you read those chapters and you leave the comments and emotional feedback and chapter feedback and part feedback. So, give that a shot.
See how you like it.
See how it feels. and keep in mind, you are still in a better place than we are because you were at least getting the final version of the book.
The improved version.
Yes.
Wind and Truth was the most chaotic beta. I can't wait to talk about the crazy order that we got of that book. It's completely bonkers. So I'm so excited for everyone to read it, but I'm also very excited to like just go through. It's like, yeah, this is the order we got.
I cannot wait to tell people about what happens in chapter Kaladin New.
Yeah, and the chapters are not numbered in the Wind and Truth beta. They're not numbered at all, and it's like chapter like Kaladin 1-1, right? So like the first Kaladin chapter of part 1, and they go like that for like the whole thing. And yeah, sometimes there's like, I think there was like New Zeth flashback like 13, and then it was Zeth flashback 13, and then the next one was New Zeth flashback 2. So like the numbers did not make any sense. Just insane. There was like chapter Dalinar 10, new chapter Dalinar 10, not the same chapter at all. They're right next to each other. And there is a chapter called Chapter Kaladin New, which is hilarious to me every single time. Like, I don't know what order he wrote these. I don't know what he rewrote. It is totally bonkers.
And here's the thing. If you think that you can do a Brandon beta because you've alphaed or betaed somebody's book, like a writer friend, you know, like I've been working on alphaing Eric's book.
That's true.
And like someone else, I betaed someone else.
Someday I'll have a book out.
The experience is completely different. First of all, not all that chaos. Second of all, honestly, half the time I forget about like going like more in depth with comments, and I just leave reactions, and I'll go back and reread it. Like when the whole thing is done, when all whatever 300,000 words you end up having are done, I'll go back and give like considered thoughts.
Yeah,
because sometimes I get too caught up in what's happening and I just leave reactions and scream at characters.
And that's very easy to do with Brandon things. That's so easy to do during a Brandon avalanche. It's just like, I don't know, chapter is exciting. Like, I need to read the next scene because we're in the ending mode and it's cool. It's cool stuff. like what do you even write sometimes? It's like, that sure was cool.
I think the closest experience for us, will be, you know, that we were proofreading and rearranging the translations from the old translator in Spanish for the Spanish version. And it was like, we weren't reading a book. We were reading like paragraph versus paragraph, correcting. For example, I had, at some point I was like, but this character wouldn't speak like that, you know? And it's like, but I mean, and how can I know, I don't know, that Lopen or Bean or whoever wouldn't talk like that. It's like, I don't know, but in my mind, and from the long time I've met them, they wouldn't say this.
You have a feel for the character, and it's like, this doesn't match the feel, yeah. That sounds like a new kind of hell. For sure. Translation, like, that sounds so much worse.
The terms, like, I see them, like, sometimes floating around the internet. They throw me off so much. Like, I can't connect Donchar to Esquirla el Amanecer in my mind, even if I know it's the literal translation. It just doesn't work.
My worst nightmare right now is that we have our own hodder in Spanish, I think. I fear. You know that we have this hold the door.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Everything like that.
And then it's hodder. So I kept thinking, because unite them doesn't have a gender. And Spanish, it's unelos,
Sure, right.
like masculine. And I'm thinking all the time, what if it's a
Like, yeah, because that can matter in, like, Hero of Ages and stuff, right? Exactly, yeah. And the fun with Arcanist stuff is that we will send comments into the void and we'll have no idea what happens with them. And we'll have, like, here's a giant list of questions. And, like, sometimes they get answered sometimes, but usually not at all. And so it's so hard to deal with continuity when you're like, I don't know if that's right, but I don't have the full picture to know if it's definitely not correct. Like, maybe what's going on? Yeah. And, like, Stormlight Tendency books, horrible.
Yeah, so let me field this one, and we can wrap up the exclusive topics that only 5 people in the world can talk about.
Yes, yes, true.
So there's a team of 6 of us that Brandon calls Arcanists. You can find us credited in some of the books, not all of the books, even though we look at all of the books. But so you can find us there. And our job is it is very similar to a beta read, but we are focused on very specific things. So it's something between a beta read, and some of you might be familiar with the idea of, like, a subject matter expert read or a sensitivity read. So you are still reading an early draft of the book, but the feedback that you are focusing on is very concentrated on, well, it is our job to make sure, as well as we can, make sure that that Brandon doesn't contradict himself or write himself in a corner when it comes to his magic, right? Something that we are all very familiar with and a lot of us love is that Brandon's magic systems feel very like real science. And I know that people keep asking him about, hey, when are we going to get a textbook on the Cosmere magic? When are we going to get, like, a physics textbook? And that's never going to happen. But our job here is to make that as close to possible as we can. So, for example, when a windrunner is using a lashing to hold an object in place, we got to go, okay, well, what is, reasonably speaking, like, how big is this object? How much work from, like, a scientific, physical sense are we doing here? And we have, like, estimates. And then we go, okay, so, and this is best case scenario, by the way. Usually this doesn't happen, but we can go, okay, so here's roughly how much work this is done. And Kaladin used 1 sphere worth of investiture. And then 2 books later, we see him do either way more or way less work with 1 sphere of investiture. So our job is to go, oh, hey, Brandon, actually, if you look back 2 books ago, you said that 1 sphere gives you this much work. So you are contradicting yourself here. Make that consistent. Usually it's way more fuzzy.
So fuzzy. He just writes cool stuff, and you're just like, does that make sense? Like, maybe. Sure. Sometimes
we have to go, hey, as we understand magic in the Cosmere in general, as established in this other book and this other book that have nothing to do with the series that we are talking about, what you are writing here seems like it contradicts those other principles.
For these 5 reasons.
Yeah.
I think everyone is well aware Brandon just does cool stuff and is just like, hey, what if we do this cool thing? And it's like, oh,
He has the weirdest ideas sometimes.
the weirdest ideas, and like our job isn't to contradict. Like, we want to enable the cool things, right? And so, like, it's magic, obviously, right? So it's more like, okay, does it directly contradict definite rules that we definitely have, or is it fuzzy? And sometimes there are things where Brandon's like, oh yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So like that does happen sometimes. And sometimes he wants you to do rocket science. That also happened. So that's great. That was great.
Yeah,
I'm not a rocket scientist, so I think they got an actual rocket scientist to talk about that. I think.
It was just an astrophysicist.
Great, cool, good. I teach calculus. I don't know what I'm doing there.
Hey, I have to say, it was a lot of fun to spend like a weekend taking a crash course in rocket science and like nuclear physics.
Both real science and Cosmere things are much more complicated, because you'd think, oh, a sphere, that's one specific unit, but it's like, is there a variable amount of things? Because like breaths, actually, there's variance there. And so like, how can you even measure this? Like, what is a reasonable range? It's very complicated. And so sometimes we're like, okay, well, it's good enough. It's in that range. Anywho, that's the horror of that. It is very fun, and the books are better for it. Like Lost Metal and Sunlit Man, especially. Like going through Sunlit Man, and I'm like, I don't have an issue with. Like, I think this is good. I think we're set. That was great. That was such a relief. Sunlit Man was really stressful for that.
I've heard horror stories.
Oh yeah,
Sunlit Man.
Oh yeah, we'll tell him sometime.
I was saying that maybe this is why you ended working also with Johnny and Brotherwise Games for the TTRPG of the Stormlight.
Yes, so exactly the same team that is Brandon's Arcanists is also advising on the Stormlight RPG that will be coming out, not coming out, but the crowdfunding campaign for that will be coming out later this year.
And so we do basically the same thing.
We do basically the same thing. We see content for the game, and we're like, does this make sense? Is this consistent with the canon? Can we make it consistent with the canon? Like, we would see a piece of, like, sometimes we'd see an early concept for a piece of art in there, and Johnny would go, we'd like to suggest certain things about this character. We'd like to suggest that this character is like, how do we, here's a character, how do we indicate that this character might be Herdazian, for example, by just their like clothing or items that they have like on them.
And then we ask Evgeny to do that part, because
I just
yeah. But a lot of it's like there's very specific questions to try and make it as canonical. Like that's their goal, right? And so we're helping with that.
I really need like the world book in my hands.
Mhm.
I mean, it's going to be like amazing. Since we don't have now, still, we don't have any adaptation yet.
Yes.
This is going to be the closest to like have an expansion of the world, seeing places that maybe haven't seen yet. I remember that Johnny shared the Valenorim piece of art explaining how was everything. I'm really happy that La Maeri, I don't know how you use
Her name is Marie.
Marie. So that Marie is working on that. I mean, she's one of. I remember that Botanica Shoe at some point was like super like creating tons of art, but I guess she has like more work now in real life, and she doesn't have the time to do fun art. And then
I know that Botanica has been busy with like translation stuff specifically.
In that, it's very time consuming.
So you have some idea about what that is like.
Yeah.
Especially when they're Stormlight books. It's like, oh, great. Well, this is the next long time period of my life.
I want to talk with her sometime, because, I mean, when you're translating something, you have to take a term of something that, especially in Brandon, that doesn't exist, and maybe it doesn't even exist in your language, and maybe there is nothing even close enough
Mostly close.
to that,
Yeah.
remotely close. I wonder how does it work in Chinese? I mean, blowing my
Make it
mind.
work, like with grammar and like, for example, like grammatical gender makes things even more complicated. Like, thank God, at least English and Spanish don't have like declensions, because those would make things worse. It's a
Sounds super
nightmare,
fun.
honestly.
Sounds super fun.
So, what do you expect about the adaptations? What are your thoughts? Do you think that we are going to have it like anytime soon?
I mean, I was around for the Wheel of Time adaptation. It was announced, I think, before I really got into the community, but I was on like Dusty Wheel. And fun fact, the week I got like made staff on the 17th shard was the big push for Wheel of Time news and things on the server. It was chaos, absolute chaos.
Oh yes, it was trial by fire for you. That's right. I remember that.
So I'm kind of dreading like that part, because the Wheel of Time community, like historically, it's been very nice, very welcoming. Places like JordanCon, I've only heard good things about. And then the adaptation happened, and you start saying like the bad sides of the community, and that scares me with the Cosmere, because it's an even bigger fandom, because the series is ongoing and Brandon is so present, and so that part scares me. But also, I think that experience with Wheel of Time is definitely going to help us in terms of like knowing how to handle things. B, I am excited for more people to get to know the Cosmere without something that's as intimidating as like the whole series of books Brandon has written. These are huge books. Most people can't keep up with as much as Brandon is writing. I'm excited for like adaptation decisions. Like, there are places that could be improved on, particularly in the older books and even nowadays, that I think the adaptation leaves room for. Can it be controversial? Yes. And am I scared of that? Yes. But I'm also excited to see like a new take on the Cosmere. I've heard ideas. Alan Seawright from Cinema Therapy, he's a like big Cosmere fan, and he's mentioned ideas he has. Like, his dream project is Mistborn. Will it happen? I have no idea. He's mentioned ideas that like this would be so cool to see on screen. Things that you've only ever imagined before. It's incredible to see them get realized with people and faces you can assign to it, and like all the action and the effect. If it turns out well, it's going to be really cool. And so it's like these two sides. We talked about it a lot on our adaptation episodes when we thought it was coming like this year.
I mean, he did, in our defense, he did say it would be like very unlikely for us to not be filming this time next year. Like, and so that was 2022. So I think like summer 2023, that's what he was expecting. But then the economy did less good, and so I think they're much more reticent.
And also other things happened.
Yes. I'm worried about the influx of people, but you know, we're ready to ban people who are jerks. Like, it's pretty easy, honestly. Like, if you're gonna be just a horrible person, like we don't need that in the community. But I do want to make sure all the communities stay very welcoming to potentially show or movie only fans, and having them feel like they belong there, because there are likely going to be people in a book community that's like, oh, you're not real fans because you haven't read the books. And so we would definitely want to tamp down on that as well.
Ban.
Yeah, like, and I think that's workable, because I think the vast majority of people in most communities are really nice. And I think in the Cosmere fandom especially, like, so many people are just so wonderful and nice. Sometimes you do have to nudge people like, okay, let's not do that. That was less good, you know? And then they're like, yeah, cool. That makes sense. I'll do that. And then it's no problem.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly in the same place. The Cosmere fandom, well, I can't speak for the entire fandom, not about this, but the 17th shard has been fortunate enough to have gotten big enough that we can afford to be firm with our guidelines. We can say, hey, we are not trying to make this a place for everyone. We'd like for there to be a place...
It's a place for anyone, but not necessarily for everyone.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So we can afford to say, hey, you are not really fitting in this community. Go somewhere else, please.
And like, we'll give you a chance to be like, hey, these are our guidelines. Like, we don't like banning people, but if someone's gonna be like a jerk, all right, cool, man. Like, it's Tuesday for us. I'm not gonna lose sleep over it, okay?
And so we are fortunate enough to be in a place where we can afford to do that, which means that I'm a little apprehensive of what an adaptation might do to the global like fandom and the global community, right? Adaptations are always thorny,
controversial.
There's no, I like even Lord of the Rings, which is now held up as the standard of this is what a perfect adaptation looks like, right? Back in the day when it was getting adapted, people were upset. And I'm sure that like some people are still upset to this day, but like you would be hard, like it's difficult to get better than Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. Like that is the golden standard, right?
I think the internet really changes things. That's kind of the difference.
Yeah,
that is also true. Yes. And so I think what's going to be important for us is to establish that, hey, people who are coming in from the show or the movie or whatever we get are just as much fans as the people here who have been fans for like 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, whatever it ends up being. And we have to treat them with like respect and welcome them into the community, but two,
make them feel excluded with conversations. I think.
Yes. Two, we have to be,
because we know our community. Some people are very mechanics, very deep lore focused, and that can be intimidating. Honestly, like kind of like what happened to me with the Dawn Shard episode, or actually the first time I joined the server, I was like, this is way too much.
Yeah.
And then the second time, I was a bit smarter about muting like the book channels and things and not having to keep up with everything. Yeah. But we have to like be even more proactive about that when it comes to the movies, because there's so many things that, I mean, we're gonna get an option, like say Mistborn the Final Empire as an example. They're not going to know all the things that we know about now.
Yeah.
And like we've seen this like with the Wheel of Time, people complaining about, oh, but this, but that, and I'm like,
but this thing in Era 3 Book 2, it's like, it's ruined.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're not putting that scene that we learn about in Secret History 3 that really recontextualizes the history of the Final Empire. Like, just, hey. Don't. Just don't. No.
I think most people understand that we love the books and we want more people to love the books. And so, like, that's important for us to, you know, be welcoming, but also if some people decide to not be welcoming and join in, then it's like, okay, bye.
I wonder, what were you saying about, I'm just curious about the we missed the window.
Oh, I was just more thinking the economy. Like there was that window where like it feels like lots of people were really interested in the Cosmere. And like Brandon was saying, he
just like, after the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Right,
like lost another writing day a week, which was part of the reason Stormlight was pushed back. Although I think it would have anyway from Secret Project revisions, because you gotta revise 4 books, Brandon. That takes some time, buddy. But he's an ambitious man, you know, Brandon. So that's fine. So I just think like we have not permanently missed the window. But I don't think we're gonna get something in like the next year or two. Like I think it's gonna be a while later. I will be a lot more comfortable with a Stormlight adaptation after book 5's out. That'll be really good.
Yeah, I think we are definitely getting an adaptation at some the Cosmere is too big to not be adopted, and I'm happy to hear that Brandon is picky about what deal he accepts. I know that he might be too picky. That's a possibility. Some of the way that he has critiqued the Wheel of Time adaptation,
like Brandon,
makes some of us think that, hey, maybe
let screenwriters do screenwriting. It's completely different novel writing.
Just back off a little bit. Just a little bit. Like, not a lot, just a little bit.
And it's hard because you want him to be involved.
Yes. So hey, Brandon, you are at a 9 out of 10 on like involvement right down. Just go up to an 8 or like a 7. Like I still want him to be really involved. I still want an adaptation to be really faithful to both what is like the text and the idea of the text, but I don't want to be in a situation where like where Brandon just grasps the canon and is like, we gotta do this, right? Like, he is a brilliant author. There are people out there who are as brilliant in the things that they do, right? And so we gotta find the compromise. Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, for me, the golden standard for this balance of an author being involved, like very involved, like even writing episodes, but also accepting changes and like reworking things and ending up like with something, honestly, in many ways, like better than the original that can improve on things that at the time needed improving, is the new Percy Jackson adaptation. Rick Riordan wrote, like, along with other people, but he wrote a huge majority of the episodes. But you look at the series, and it's not a word-for-word rewrite of The Lightning Thief. That were, like, early on decisions of, like, early series weirdness have been cut and replaced with things that make a lot more sense for where the series ended up going. The sheer amount of foreshadowing for like book 5 and even Heroes of Olympus is insane. And those are things that Rick could have never done as he was writing the first book, particularly because the book came as a form of like telling it to his son, you know? And so things like that, I think, is like, for me, the golden standard of an author being involved. But knowing like where to like have changes or like what things would work better in a TV format that would never work in a book, or things that would work in a book but would never work in a TV format. You know, you lose